Welcome to regular city council meeting, Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. We'll begin with the roll call.
Burkover. Here. Councilmember Garcia. Here. Councilmember Watson. Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Here. Mayor Bacon.
Present. Next up, I'll look for an approval for the agenda.
So moved. Support.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, approval of the minutes, regular council, February 21st, 2023. Look for a motion.
So moved.
Moved. I'll second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All written communication received by council are posted to the online agenda packet. Next up, communication from the audience. Up first, Dean, Falcon Point.
Would you like me to speak now or when the subject matter comes up?
You can go now.
Hello, my name is Dean Matsudo. I'm the homeowner of 3977 Falcon Point. Before I start this, I wanted just to remind the council members that I was looking up East Lansing bylaws, and one of the things is that I want to frame this in 2018, October 2018, the council and mayor signed a resolution about the age-friendly state of Michigan pact. And so I'm really addressing this as senior citizens and the concern over senior citizens within East Lansing. First of all, from my understanding, the original park at Falcon Point was designed as a mobile home for senior citizens. Over the years, it's transferred ownership, and also the design of the property has also evolved. So the most current owner, to my knowledge, is the FMP Investors, and the current owners are requesting a multifamily housing change instead of the original modular home or mobile park concept. So why am I concerned? Well, in spring of 2022, FMP Investors sent out a letter that notified the residents, notice of demand for possession, termination of tenancy. The reason cited was change in use of substantial nature of the mobile home park. Well, this letter created a great deal of amount of confusion, stress, and insecurity to all the residents. Most of the residents are senior citizens, with many residing there on fixed income. So that insecurity just did not sit well. 6 months later, in fall of 22, FMP Investors then sent out a letter notifying the same residents that they had rescinded the termination of tenancy. Well, all during this time, many of the residents there, in fact, to my knowledge, all the residents had no lease. And to what I looked up, that was a violation of the Mobile Home Commission Act of 96 and 1987, which requires the owners of a mobile park to have written lease for all tenants. So what I want to emphasize to all of you is that many of these residents are senior citizens. They put a great deal of financial income into the purchase of the homes, but they do not own the land. Many of these homes are on what we call fixed foundations, which means the homes cannot be easily moved. The other thing too is that many of them have attached garages. The attached garage, many of these residents pay taxes upon, and the garage cannot also be moved. So without a lease, with a notice of tenancy to vacate, many of these homeowners were left in limbo land, not knowing what to do and what their alternatives were. So that's why I'm speaking to you today. The other thing too is that these are parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents trying to reside in a community that they had dreams of and thought it was a secure investment. But during that period of time, and still until just recently, there was no lease, no written agreement, nothing that guaranteed their future. And without a future, living on a fixed income is very difficult. So what can they do? For 6 months, they sat in limbo until Falcon Point investors, FMP investors, asked for this change. And this is our only chance to talk and bring this subject matter to your knowledge. Because what it created was they couldn't sell their homes, they couldn't buy the land, they were unsure without a lease, what would the rent be? And if you watch the national news, rent jumped up all across the nation during the period of COVID. So how can a person manage and be able to enjoy their lifestyle unsure of what kind of future they have? So what I'm asking today, what I'm requesting City Council is to consider this.
30 seconds remaining.
Okay? By the way, I just received a notice that they're offering a lease. So, two things. One, consider the resolution and try to create a fair, livable environment for these people. Second thing is, before you approve the request, maybe table the motion so that the homeowners who have been told that they can sign the lease on April have a chance to review their lease and make sure that it's something that will ensure their future and be able to have a comfortable place to reside and live out the rest of their lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Falcon Point, Kathy?
Back here again, guys. Sorry I missed the meeting last week or week before. I was under the weather. I know Dean is really passionate about what has gone on in this Falcon Point. I know all of you have received a packet of information from me. It has also been sent to the Attorney General. I was talking with Mayor Bacon. It's also been sent to Debbie Stabenow's office, and it should have been forwarded to HUD. Now, I do not know if the Friedmans are here this evening. If they are, I wish they'd hold their hand up so I know who they are. But I understand what they're trying to do here is renew an application for the site that was already done before. Is that correct? Do you know?
Do you understand that we're not voting on this issue tonight?
No, I did not know that.
Okay, I think what we're doing tonight is we're just setting a public hearing. Is that correct, Mayor?
That's correct.
We're setting a time for a public hearing in which all of you can come and raise your objections.
All right. I'm not raising an objection.
Ma'am, I just want to share with you the process.
I hear
so that
you.
you understand we aren't going to be taking any votes on anything
That's
tonight,
good. Okay, I got that part. I'm not wanting them to stop their building. They're one of the first builders that have actually finished a project that they said they were going to do, and we've been there over 20 years. Seems like every 5 years this thing comes up where they want us to move. We're not moving, not by a long shot. And what I want to know tonight is whether or not, if it's just the same plot, I have no objection to it going through. If it's the same amount of apartments that they were going to build in the first place, because they kind of let it lapse, I believe. And I have been chosen to represent the rest of the group as their kind of liaison between the Friedmans and myself and them. They have agreed to let us buy the property. However, they approached their bankers and their, financial people, and they will not let them sell us the property at this time. So he agreed to let us stay, but I don't have that in writing. So I want one of you, or some of you, or all of you to approach that subject with them. If you're going to let us stay for the duration, for as long as we live, we need something in writing on that. I want to hold their feet to the fire. They've been working with me very well. I think we've got a good communication line going. But like Dean just said, I just walked in here and he showed me a letter. They usually raise the rent by about $20 every couple years or so. And they've raised it $50. And what we're paying for is garbage pickup. We have no clubhouse, we have no pool. And there are 2 sites right down the road from us that average, what'd you say, about 510, did you tell me, 520? The rent per lot? 510, and the 2 that are down, and they have clubhouses and pools. I don't think that's fair. I'm not paying, to sit on somebody's property and pay for garbage pickup and pay that much a month. I think they should leave it as is, at least until the end of the year, and we see where all this goes. Then if they want to raise the rent, I think it should be in conjunction with the other mobile home parks around us, because they have more amenities than we do and will ever have, because they'll never build them. Well, I think that's pretty much all I got to say, unless any of you have questions. Please hold on to the paperwork that I sent you. I don't want that to get lost and have to put it back all together again, but you've been very helpful in the past, protecting us as taxpayers as well as seniors, and I hope that you continue to do so. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. 5G, Peter?
Good evening. My name is Peter Dewan. I live at 602 North Lawn. I appreciate having the opportunity to address you this evening. I know over the last several meetings, Council has heard a lot about 5G towers. Most recently, a community forum was held on February 27th with representatives of Crown Castle. I believe there were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 80 to 100 individuals, East Lansing residents, that expressed their opinions with regard to small cell tower installation, either in person or in writing. Clearly, it's been a topic that is of interest to the community. The beauty of living in East Lansing is that we have countless citizens who stand up to make our city a better community. And I'm pleased to report to City Council this evening the latest example of this is an ad hoc committee that's recently been established, which is referred to as CEL, Citizens Engaged for Livable Locations. CEL has been created primarily to work collaboratively with city staff, Crown Castle, and Verizon on the site selection for small cell tower installation. CEL was created for East Lansing residents to share ideas and thoughts on how to responsibly construct small towers in our residential neighborhoods. The ad hoc committee has shared objective information to the neighborhood associations, presidents, and leaders in every neighborhood in East Lansing. Each day, more and more East Lansing residents are reaching out to gather additional information on how this impacts their neighborhood and how they can offer their voice to find a responsible plan. The objective of the committee is to use a best practice approach to the site selection and location of towers, and to the degree possible, co-locate with the existing infrastructure. CEL embraces the advancement of technology, the preservation and aesthetics of our tree-lined streets and neighborhoods, and the individual property rights of each and every East Lansing resident. I hope that the East Lansing City Council will follow the approach that the City of Ann Arbor has adopted, entitled Small Cell Facilities Guidelines. Our request in the weeks ahead is for Council to pass a resolution which will do 2 things: extend the automatic approval deadline for the 2 pending permit applications presently with the city, and also request Crown Castle and Verizon to disclose the location of each new tower that is planned to be installed, and meet with city staff and representatives of CEL to determine the least invasive and best placement of towers to accomplish Verizon, Crown Castle, and most importantly, East Lansing residents' objectives. The residents of East Lansing simply want our voices to be heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. (5G), Frederick?
I will be the briefest speaker tonight. Fred Baker, 947 Roxburgh. Somewhere at your place, you will find a memo that is addressed to the same subject that Peter just spoke to, which I prepared and hope will be of some use to you as you consider the 5G cell tower issue. It contains the two modest proposals that Peter alluded to, and I hope you'll have a chance to take a look at it. And I realize it's not an agenda item tonight, but we hope that the question will be placed on the agenda before the automatic approval date for two towers whose construction was noticed on December 27th. If you need to get hold of me, Tammy has my contact information. I'll be happy to provide any further information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to turn that in at that time.
Just state your name for the record.
My name is Mark Breedlove. I live in the Glencairn neighborhood. Again, I want to address the 5G towers. First, I just want to affirm everything that Peter said about my neighbors and I are eager to work cooperatively with Verizon to make sure that we're not anti-technology, we're not Luddites. We're absolutely in favor of technology. But so far, we haven't got enough information to let us know that in fact, we're going to be heard. And so I do hope that Cell will have a voice at the table and will have something to say. I also want, and I very much appreciate that next week this is going to be on the agenda, and I hope I will be here. But for now, I just wanted to report on the meeting we had with the Crown Castle representatives last week, that while I appreciated them being there, I think the consensus was it was a pretty unsatisfactory meeting, primarily because they seemed to have no details. They only sort of spoke in generalities about where things would be going. Well, my wife and I, our home is in the crosshairs. They listed our address in the Lansing State Journal last December. But when I asked them why they chose that particular location, I'm really not getting a sense that it was anything more than closing their eyes and putting their finger on the map. As I look at the location on South Lawn, on one side of our driveway is a tree, on the other side of the driveway is a lamppost, and then next to that is a fire hydrant, and then next to that is a yield sign. So I don't think they'd ever seen the property, and yet somehow they came to this decision. And the other thing that's a little concerning is while South Lawn itself has no poles, which makes it a very scenic and pleasant place to live, our property parcel on two corners already has a wooden tower that I estimate to be at least 30 feet tall. So if the aim is to provide technology for 5G, why aren't they proposing to add their tower to the tops of these poles that are already in place and would be very, out of sight? And again, no one there could tell me that, except in generalities, that when they can, they like to go on top of poles if they can, as I think they would if the aim is to provide technology and not simply to be part of a land grab. And so again, I appreciate that we'll have a chance to talk about this in more detail next time, and I do hope that Verizon and Crown Castle will work cooperatively with us so that we can provide the technology they want to bring to East Lansing, and yes, preserve our neighborhoods that we all love so much. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark and Peter. Molly Spooner, 815 Stewart. Just want to echo what Peter and Mark said, and also let you all know I want to thank Nicole McPherson for all of her time so far. I reached out to the City of Ann Arbor Small Cell Wireless Facilities team. I spoke with their telecom portfolio manager. He knows all of these telecom people very well, is in touch with them. He confirmed in most cases, Ann Arbor is able to direct the site within 75 feet. And he said for probably 80% of these cells, he's got them to co-locate. So I'd really encourage us to look at what Ann Arbor has done. Thank you.
Public comment? All right. Seeing none, online?
We do have a caller in the queue. Caller with a number ending in 954, you're welcome to address council.
Hello. Hello. Good evening. I think you can hear me. This is Nicole Biber calling. I was excited to see the free manual and standards of practice has advanced to your consent agenda. And I'd like to speak a bit towards that. I see in the approach to the project, it says, align city tree maintenance guidelines with community goals and priorities. I'm wondering sort of what the overview of how those are determined is. Certainly hoping that the pollinator-friendly community comes into that, as well as some of our community members who spoke tonight with the 5G. I was approached by someone, and one of the worries was, why are we having these poles instead of trees? And I think there's a worry that they'll take the place where trees could be. So certainly there's an interest. We see that with concern with the Valley Court, with the amount of paving. And, you know, I think people just, in a really good way, crave that green space. Part of the beauty of the neighborhoods people have mentioned tonight certainly is related to trees. And I think it's exciting to see that as an opportunity for when they say in their is it RFP, I forget but how they say they want to ensure compliance with current industry accepted best practices and standards. I'm really curious about, does that include sort of trees in the increased understanding of their role as kind of sentinels of their own community, and that they do better as part of a biodiversity of other native species. So like there's the lovely kind of ad hoc style happening, I think it'd be really good to see community members who have interest in these matters be invited to part of those initial meetings. I saw that was part of the plan, making sure that public is included as stakeholders so we can really assure like a current view of what those community goals and priorities are. And, you know, that valuable role of the living kind of infrastructure. I really appreciate that this reach out to make a standard, you know, underscores that that's seen as important among our city leaders. And I just want to say, since I haven't seen, I don't think people since we had the difficult days with the loss of life at MSU, I think probably we all at those times realized how important it is to have that beauty in our life. I really love the idea that the flowers that were put out are being, you know, preserved to help plant a tree in memory, and that urge to have the living things be kind of our connecting point and a kind of haven for us and a solace at all different times. I think just I'd really like to see a vision expansive and have this tree standards reflect those possibilities. Miigwech.
Thank you. Next up, item 2.3, communication from Mayor and Council. Councilperson Garcia?
Nothing.
Councilperson Brookover?
No, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg?
I don't have anything tonight.
I have a little something. First, I just want to address, obviously, as a city, we're going through some change at the moment. I'm a person that's very accustomed to change. It's in my background. It's what I do. I'm an athlete. I'm a coach. I work in change. I deal with change, but it's no less frustrating for me. But I do just want us to know, I got to set a couple things straight. Some of the things and rumors and things that begin to circulate around change which is what happens in the absence of the stability and as things are coming back into focus. Just absolutely know that as a council, if you're hearing anything out there that council said or the mayor said, it's probably not true. I'm about the easiest person you can ask. If I said it, I said it. And you'll hear it directly from me. So that's going to be kind of how that is. Kind of the mythology about council, or I'll speak in my own voice for this point, wanting to make specific changes or do certain things. Kind of none of that's true. That's just kind of the stuff that comes out of in the absence sometimes of things and then the changes taking place. So there's no truth to any, particularly around us looking to shoehorn people into different roles or do any of these other things or change qualifications or do any other things. The only decision council's made is to have our interim city manager and begin our city manager search. There's been really no other conversations taking place around anything as a city or anything else that you're kind of hearing in that space. But I do understand how that occurs during that process and the process of change, which is very difficult. Second part, kind of to this, just understanding. Since I've been in East Lansing, one of the biggest challenges, and what I think comes out of this is a feeling of scarcity. And once scarcity kind of gets into your culture, where there's limited resources, perceived limited resources, and it puts elements in competition, I've seen a little bit of that in our culture. And I think that's where what allows for some of the things to come out of that. It forces us to kind of hyperfixate. We'll focus in on short-term goals. It triggers stress, and then kind of begins a cascade of kind of negative events. We're not in a scarcity mindset. We're not moving forward in scarcity. Ultimately, at the end of the day, assets are finite. We will move forward in the process of allocating assets through the budget process, but that budget process will focus on people and the people that make the city run. At the end of the day, these things are small parts that we're dealing with kind of at the top of this, because the multiple hundreds of people that make East Lansing run don't have time to attend meetings, don't have time to do interviews with the media, don't have time to go back and forth on these issues because they're busy making the city run and be effective and actually what the end user, the citizens, need. The stuff that happens at this level is really secondary to the work that's done by staff and everyone else in those things. And we'll keep a prioritization on staff and on keeping those things moving forward. So just know, it's from my perspective, my background in sports and that kind of thing, it's always the name on the front rather than the name on the back. The name on the front is East Lansing. The names on the back will always change and have changed throughout history, but the name on the front remains the same. And East Lansing is what East Lansing is. That's greatness, that's potential, that's bright people, that's people who form a cell group to take on an entire industry in the midst of our community. So I don't get a lot of anxiety when small things happen in the grand scheme of things, because East Lansing tends to stick up for itself. It takes care of itself. As elected officials, all that stuff takes care of itself as well. So just know that we're here for you. Most of what you're going to be hearing is part of the process. We're here for dissent as well. You'll never see me or anyone else. If you've been hearing that I'm discouraging dissent, I'm the biggest encourager of dissent that there is in politics. I like dissent. I like to see the full picture of things, and that will be a priority here. And I'll say as well, here's what we can control, and here's what you'll see council focusing in on. We can control on having an interim city manager who has a focus on public safety, as we're looking for to move subjects of public safety forward. It's good to have someone in the seat that has that laser focus, and will be able to support our public safety apparatus moving forward through what was different weeks ago and creates new challenges in public safety today, things we anticipated, but things that are now very real. We'll recruit and hire and move forward in the city manager process in a transparent and kind of basic, simple way. We'll come forward with a fair and balanced budget with growth in mind, but really the focus being on the people and personnel and fairness in that way. And then we'll hope that whoever takes that seat looks objectively at our processes and looks at different redundancies and removal of things to allow the organization time to grow and allow individuals, what people have spoken to me about, is allowing people to have mastery and focus in on certain things that they're good at and do that kind of thing. I think most importantly, we're just going to focus in on the success of our employees who make this city go day to day. And from there, they'll take the city where it needs to go. I just believe it's important to always at the end of the day, put East Lansing out front. Anytime you talk about East Lansing, it's a dream destination. It's a Big Ten city. It's a city that's learned from by other cities, and we'll continue to play those roles, but we'll also continue to not assume everything we do is perfect, but we will look to be better each day in that process. So just know, if you've got concerns, you can bring them directly to me. My open door policy is both literal and figurative. You can bring it to me, you can call me, you can talk to me at any point. And particularly, I know when there's big change like this, it gets a little bit like high school, but you can literally, if you think I said it, you can ask me about it. I'll tell you exactly what I said and probably what I said, and most of the time it will be not what I said. So we'll move forward from there. Looking forward to the process, looking forward to providing a great deal of stability for staff and the city. I do realize municipalities work best outside of flux and outside of change. I will return to that order in short order. But in the meantime, I just ask everyone to stay the course and continue to move forward and move the city forward, because it's East Lansing that matters at the end of the day. So next up, comments from the city manager.
Good evening, Mayor, city members of City Council, to the community at large. Good evening. I do have a brief comment as well. I'd like to read it. Just wanted to put a few thoughts down so I could articulate it clearly and hopefully without any controversy. We have received the resignation of our interim HR director, Ben Dawson, our interim planning director, Peter Mincer, along with Deputy Chief Chad Conley. And I'm mentioning their names because I know that has gone forward through the media and different sources, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. They have each decided to accept the new job opportunities that were presented. I have enjoyed working with each and every one of them and wish them nothing but the best in the future. They have continued to work very hard and make themselves available, and we most certainly appreciate that. I see Ben here tonight. I did not see Peter or Chad, but I just want to acknowledge that they have been just extremely helpful in working to transition, and we appreciate that. I think it's worth saying that this is a difficult transitional period. All changes in leadership are. Change causes anxiety and apprehension. We certainly can understand that. The greatest teacher I am aware of taught in parables or used analogies to provide a visual example when discussing difficult issues. I choose to follow that example. I equate what is happening here to a team that has changed its head coach. And it's interesting that you used a similar analogy there, Mayor. Under the best of circumstances, this creates an emotionally challenging and arduous time for the team and coaches that remain. They will be concerned about their own future and what change means to them. This is natural. I labored over this when entertaining the decision to come back in this capacity. I understood it could be challenging. I understood that people might draw their own conclusions about how and why we got here. I decided to consider and ultimately accept the offer because I hoped I could provide a sense of stability and security for the team that remained. I wanted to encourage and remind all the staff here that this too shall pass. I say this to myself whenever I'm dealing with my own anxiety or apprehension. The future is bright in East Lansing. We have always had a dedicated, fantastic, and tremendous workforce, and we still do. I am confident that the services will continue to be provided at a high level for our community. I want to reassure our residents of this fact. We serve an active and engaged community. They are resilient, intelligent, and creative. We will take this opportunity to fill vacancies that may occur with excited, highly motivated people that will meet the community needs. We intend to remain responsive to the community and council's concerns as we find our way forward. I will keep the council apprised of any changes here and provide as much notice as I am able. We are facing the same competition all employers are facing at this moment. Some individuals may pursue other opportunities because of uncertainty. Others are simply retiring. We will move forward with the hiring process for several key leadership positions. We will seek out employees that reflect the mission, vision, and values of the city, council, and the community at large. We will remain focused on providing great service and meeting the expectations of our constituents. So I can report tonight that we have concluded the final process for the deputy city clerk process, and I'm not sure that they've extended the job offer just yet, but I know that process has concluded. We are interviewing candidates for the finance director this week and next week. And we do have a plan, at least for addressing some of the interim concerns around planning and the planning department and planning director. I am not announcing any names or any of those things out of respect for the individuals that wanted to have time to make the appropriate notifications that they need to make to their friends, family, employers, and constituents as well. But we are certainly looking at all of these items, and we are working to move forward, and we remain excited about the opportunities. And at the end of the day, I think we'll find our way through, and we will do our very best to maintain a focus on what's important to the residents, the council, and the community at large.
Maybe it's just a suggestion. Could I suggest that for the agenda next week, on our discussion item, as a discussion item, unless you've already decided it, that we have a discussion about the process by which we're going to pursue these appointments for these staff vacancies. And one of the things I'm going to bring up next week is, it seems to me it would make sense, given the current situation, that the city manager include 2 council members in terms of whatever final interviews there are for people who are being considered for these appointments. I just think that the process has been unclear. My understanding, at least in part, is that there's some concern about communication under the past administration. And it just seems to me this would be a good way to make sure that we have effective communication as we make these choices. So that's, I guess, kind of a question, but Mayor, a request that we get that on the agenda for next week.
Sounds good. Yeah, just before the city attorney's report, I'll just say that me and Randy did not communicate or discuss what he's going to read there, so that's pretty, like he took my stuff.
Very sporty, both of you.
Yeah. City attorney's report.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to briefly reference as it relates to the 5G discussion that's gone on. I am familiar with the Ann Arbor Small Cell Facility Guidelines, and I also did receive the report from Mr. Baker, so I appreciate that, and I'll be reaching out.
Thank you. Next up, started item 3.1, the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, 3.1, set a public hearing for March 21, 2023, City Council regular meeting to consider a site plan application from Gentilozzi Real Estate to construct a 23,000 square foot industrial building at 3400 West Road. Item 3.2, set a public hearing for the March 21, 2023 City Council regular meeting to consider a cluster development and site plan application from FP Investors LLC to construct 4 3-unit dwellings at the Falcon Point development located on the south side of State Road, west of Chandler Road. Item 3.3, approve a contract with Davey Resources Group, Incorporated, for the development of a tree manual and standards of practice in the amount of $17,496.05 and authorize the city manager to sign.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 4.1, discussion of city manager search process.
Okay, we do have 2 staff members here this evening. We have Ben Dawson and Emily Kinney, and I think they're prepared to come forward and initiate this conversation. Good evening.
Good evening. Mayor Bacon, other esteemed members of council, thank you for having us. As was said, I'm Ben Dawson, Interim Human Resources Director, and here's Emily Kenny, Human Resource Administrator with the city. We're here to talk with you about the upcoming city manager search. So starting off, I wanted to go through and highlight the proposals we received. And then also provide just a general update and discussion that staff can hopefully facilitate of just in gathering feedback that council members might have on firm selection and kind of what you want to see in the process so we can pick the firm that matches best with kind of that vision. So I'd like to start also by thanking all the search firms who submitted proposals. This is really a big part about helping the city in finding our next city manager, and these RFPs represent an investment in our community, so we want to thank their participation in this process. We requested bids directly from 4 firms, Robert Half, Frank Walsh, Michigan Municipal League, and HR Gov. In addition to this, we put out a request for proposal on February 6th, which closed on February 14th at the end of business. And through this process, the city received 5 bids from 4 firms that have experience running a national search for city manager positions. The bids were included with the agenda. I'm sure everybody's had a chance to take a look at them. Some summary data, roughly they do vary in price and offerings and services that they provide. So a couple of examples would be different firms use unique approaches to tackling the question and task of who would be a good city manager for the community. And that can include meeting with various stakeholders, community members, businesses, you name it. We actually have a lot in helping shape what that process looks like, both on the front end and on the back end. So council members brook over question about involvement on the back end and being able to actually help facilitate that. I see council being able to be involved throughout that process, and I think City Manager Randy's right there with wanting to incorporate that feedback and having discussions like this so the public can engage as well. So kind of high-level overview, and not that 100% focused on price, but we'd be remiss if we didn't include that as a discussion. So Frank Walsh came in at 13.9. Michigan Municipal League offers 2 packages. One's typical and enhanced. One's 17,000. The other's 19. HR Gov came in at 19,000. For reference, HR Gov is who has been helping us facilitate our search for a finance director, so we currently have a working relationship with them. And then Baker Tilly came in at 26,950. From a duration standpoint, you had anywhere from the search taking potentially 10 weeks up to 120 days. I will say, just keep in mind that if you're looking for the right person, or you're looking for, there are a lot of factors that play into that. So I wouldn't necessarily look at any bid and just expect it would be wrapped up solid in 10 weeks, but they're good estimates in terms of making a plan of how we want to proceed. All right. So some of the discussion questions that we wanted to facilitate would be, I think I know the answer, but I think it's important to have the discussion. How wide would we like the search to be? These firms can do national, they can do local, they can do regional. And so the question to council is kind of, what's your vision for that scope?
Don't all the brochures indicate they'll do a national search?
Yes.
So that, isn't the question already been answered by the responses?
Yeah, but I didn't know if going into it, if you wanted us to have discussions with them, if we were like, we do want to go national, but we would definitely want to target like Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan. Like, was there a primary focus in your mind, or are you comfortable with just running it as a national search?
If I could also chime in, I think that part of the reason for the question is that as we consider, as council considers the RFPs, some may be better than others as the scope of the search expands. Some may have more experiences doing regional and those searches in Michigan, while others may have a wider scope and a larger team to facilitate those things. So just trying to identify what the priorities of council would be in those regards.
Okay, my answer to your question is, if I'm paying somebody $18,000 to do a search, I want it to be a national search and a regional search and every other kind of search they can do. So
beautiful.
I don't want to pay $18,000 for somebody to do a search like in Charlotte and Pontiac. Okay? So that's my answer to your question. I don't you know, it goes without saying.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate it.
And I will just say, Councilman Brookover, one of the things as we look at and review the packages that were received is noticing their references and their list of parties that they've worked with. And so as we look at that, while all may identify that they will conduct national searches and do those things, I think that becomes more evident when you look at the list of references they provide, that they may have different levels of experience with doing that. So we hear what you're saying and we understand the expectation, but again, I think that's in part reason for the question.
Yeah, I'm not trying to diminish the question, but let me just continue this, okay? So the reality is, look, I've gone through this before, okay? And the reality is, once we hire somebody, we have control of the search. So if we decide that somebody is not casting a wide enough net, we can go to them under the contract and say, you know what, we don't like what you're doing. We want you to put an ad in the Sunday New York Times, or we want you to put an ad in the Los Angeles Times, or whatever. So it is true that once we sign up with one of these outfits, we will then have some input and control over how wide a net they cast, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It's a beginning of a conversation, really. It's just picking who you want to have that conversation with, but it will be a touch-and-go process. Many of the firms have staff that they designate to be primary, plus multiple staff helping to support that process. So to your point, at any point in the search process, if we have a concern, we bring it up and we will be able to get answers and to tweak it on the go.
Okay, and now let me ask you another question. So if I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, I assume if we retain somebody for $18,000 or $24,000 or whatever it is, and they come up with 3 candidates, and we go through the interview process, which in this community has been city council plus stakeholders in the community, and everybody agrees we don't like any of the candidates, we can go back to the search outfit and say, you know what? We don't like who you brought us, bring us some more people, correct?
I would have to consult each of the individual. I do know, I read somewhere one of them had kind of a guarantee process like that, but I would want to make sure before we made a definitive deciation on which firm to pick.
Because
But that's a great,
I'd like an answer to that question.
yep,
Okay.
can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And sorry, Mayor, I just,
No, you're good. And I think, Ben, I saw 2-year guarantees, multiple different types of iterations of that. I think this is very similar to a bid for a project when they come into very different ranges, making sure we're able to compare apples to apples on what that looks like. I know when people put these bids out there, it's their best foot forward, so to speak, as far as references and that kind of thing goes. I'd like to get a better sense of what that looks like, basically based on what Councilperson Brookover is saying there with if there's misdirection or challenges or something comes up, what's their next course of action? I think I'd rather have groups with more flexibility to do second actions versus the basic thing, and they go kind of, okay, that was our best shot kind of thing. So I think that's what we want to compare apples to apples.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
We appreciate that. That's great feedback.
so Ben, to further facilitate your facilitation and understand, I really am sad that you're leaving. So
Thank you.
this is sort of, for me, this is your valedictorian kind of thing. It's my last chance to chew on you, but you've always given me good answers, okay? And so skipping into this, GovHR, did you say you guys are using them right now for something else?
Correct. They're the
Okay.
firm that we're currently
Okay, well,
on- yeah.
page 7 of their proposal, they say, as I understand it, the bid they made, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but they say GovHR will not conduct background investigations, court credit, motor vehicle records, checks, et cetera. I hope that's not the contract we signed with them for the current church, or the current search.
well, we can,
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. We had pared down the search with the finance director because we do a lot of that on our own anyways. So they had modeled this after that. We do all of our criminal background checks and all of the motor vehicle checks and everything. So in that search, we had asked them to take some of those services off, and they modeled this after that as well.
Okay, so my comment on that is, with all due respect to you guys, that's penny wise and pound foolish. So if we can pay them an extra $1,500 or $2,000 through those background checks on a national basis, and then we can replicate them ourselves, that's money well spent. And I think in this day and age, we've all seen enough all over the country about people being hired to claim they have this, that, or the other degree, where it turns out 25 years later they don't and they didn't. So I feel pretty strong about whoever we retain. I want them to stand by a full background check. Another reason for that, obviously, is if they screw up the background check and we hire somebody, I want our money back, okay? And if we don't require them to do a background check, we don't have a leg to stand on, so.
great feedback.
While I wasn't a part of this original RFP for the finance director, that they did share with us as they brought candidates forward. There were a number of candidates, and some of those candidates did not make it to the point of us interviewing them because of things that were found in their backgrounds for whatever reason. So I'm not sure if they were speaking to specific types of background checks or other things, but I can attest to the fact that they did speak to the fact that they weeded out some candidates because of their background checks. And then I would also add that these documents and these RFPs are templates for, and they are brought to you with the intention that they could be discussed if there are some things that need to be modified or changed, and they are their presentation to us of the services that they offer typically or specifically for us, but that these would not be a contract that is executed until after we've had an opportunity to have conversations to address any of your concerns and make any modifications as well.
Thank you, I understand that.
Is our intention here tonight to declare a favorite amongst these, or is this the start of an ongoing conversation?
It's a great question. So, start of an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
So, staff can put together, based off of feedback we received tonight, and make a recommendation at an upcoming meeting. But we didn't necessarily want to come with a recommendation without having a public discussion with you and having an opportunity to incorporate your feedback.
So I guess in that case, I'll just express my personal preference. We have a uniquely engaged community. Actually, I don't know if it's unique. Maybe every community is as engaged as East Lansing. I find that difficult to believe, though. We have very interested and engaged residents, and so there was definitely a few of these that had a higher level of stakeholder input than others, and I think that is important in terms of leading the search. Really understanding this community's relationship with their CEO is pretty tantamount. So I think one indicated that the stakeholder surveys would be an email survey. I don't think that's enough. I think we need face-to-face, kind of meet and greet style engagement. So that's not to say that person or that candidate might not be able to enhance that part of their offer, but there was 3 that stood out to me as being higher in that area. So I think that's pretty critical at the outset to just make sure that the community is engaged in a really open way.
Excellent. Great feedback. Thank you.
To the Mayor Pro Tem, were you comfortable stating your preferences from that perspective?
I could if we're at that point. I think.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you want to give us. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mid-Michigan Municipal League's enhanced service seemed to be good, and then Baker Tilly is the other one that had kind of a higher level of stakeholder input. HR Gov was the email one. So those were kind of my 2, and I guess this is maybe my Midwest pride showing, but of the MML versus Baker Tilly, I kind of feel like the more local outfit has a better handle on our specific environment, I guess. So I kind of liked the combination of somebody that was deeply engaged with Michigan, but also had a national reach in their search. So that would be MML, but and then Baker Tilly, I guess, was significantly higher than the other ones. So that was my other kind of mark against them. But those would be my 2 favorite at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
Well, what other questions does Ben have? I sort of cut him off already.
Oh, you're fine. My questions were just in case you didn't, you weren't talkative bunch, just
you
to encourage.
You didn't think I was going to say anything. Oh, okay. All right.
So the other question was price being a consideration always, but in terms of if it was a difference between $5,000 or $6,000, would that be something you want heavily weighted in this, or is the idea of picking the right firm top of mind for you all?
I think I'll state back to the original point. When you get to that point, if we're narrowing it down to there, making sure it's, like as I said, apples to apples. If they've got different technology, or there's something you can articulate to why there's a difference, or they're going to do multiple town halls or something like that, that's a little bit different. If they're putting dedicated staff like you depicted, and I looked through the pictures, there's individuals who are really dedicated to the search and that kind of thing, that's a little bit different than something different. So if they're going to dedicate bodies to our search, that's a big deal. So I think just if we get down to a couple where we're articulating the differences and the things, and if we can come to terms on the dollar difference, I think it's not a deal breaker from my perspective. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah,
So.
I guess the difference in price between these is relatively negligible. A couple grand in the context of something that is of high interest to our whole community going forward, and is going to set the tone for hopefully many years to come. So to me, it's more important to have the right person in the job, and if that means going with a firm that's got a higher search criteria, or however, I don't know how they push these things out, but I'd like to get it in front of as many people as possible. So, I mean, the difference between the lowest and the highest is like 9,000. So, you know, that's relatively small within the context of our whole budget, although of course we're getting into budget season, so we are going to be watching
Yeah.
our $10,000. But
Well, and it's good to note too that a lot of times if it's a headhunter type of firm, they want a percentage of the pay for the position that they're landing. So we're already in a position where we're paying a flat rate as opposed to making it conditional on whatever the eventual salary of the city manager would be. So that's a nice consideration to have as we look at that too. Would you find it helpful if we were to follow up with some of the cities who've used these firms? Would that be something you'd like staff to invest time into, just having discussions about how their experience was, if that's...
I guess if they were confident enough in their search and their service to list them as a reference, then we probably don't necessarily need to call them because they're probably going to be relatively good. If you have a way of finding if they have dissatisfied clients, I'd be interested to hear about that, but I have a feeling that's not going to be included in their packet. So I always read the 1-star reviews before I read the 5-star reviews, but
Straight to the bottom.
Okay.
Councilperson Garcia?
Okay. Do you have any preferences just in terms of size? I know some of these are kind of repetitive and we've talked through them a bit, but weight to like a larger firm versus maybe a smaller outfit, if there's any consideration there. I know, Mayor, you talked about just as long as there's a price factor, it's an explainable difference in what we're getting for the additional dollars. So didn't know if you wanted to elaborate any more, any other candidates on that topic.
Mayor, this is all intriguing, but I know it's going to be a big surprise to you, Ron. I want to get this moving, and I'm ready to make a motion and decide this tonight. I've read all the brochures, I've read every word, I've looked at this stuff, and, you know, I'm ready to go ahead whenever you all decide you want to go ahead. So the answer to your question is, I think that's, questions like that will be ingrained in the council's deliberative process in terms of its decision. So I don't think there's any need for HR to go along those paths. We can read, we can see the size. We know that the outfit in Texas is the outfit in Texas, and all their city manager, hires are in the South and Southwest for the most part. Looked to me like, Jesse, they might have had one in Minnesota, I think. God-forsaken Minnesota, or one of the Dakotas, or one of those places that some people are from.
there's more people emigrating from Texas to Minnesota than you'd expect. They come for the snow.
Well played.
Sure there are.
It's the 40 below
So,
temperatures that really...
Ron, I sort of leave it to you, and I'm ready to go. Let's get this going.
Okay.
I want to apologize because some of the questions that are being asked were questions that I was asking staff to ask to help prompt the deliberative process. We actually thought this was also a part of that deliberation and discussion, and so I think that's what we're looking for, is insight as to whether the next step would be for you to just read and bring it for action, or if you wanted to have a more expansive kind of dialogue about any of the issues that within the package. But we're prepared as well to move forward with guidance from City Council, and I didn't want to have Ben, especially as he's looking to, take heat for some of the questions. That was what we were simply attempting to do there too.
With Mr. Brookover being ready to move, you had mentioned that your next step intention was to come back to us with recommendations. Mm-hmm. Obviously, would have been longer from this moment, but do you have a recommendation in mind that you might have been considering bringing forward?
Yeah, I mean, are you comfortable with?
Well, I don't know that we discussed and reached consensus, but I think it would be safe to say that our first impressions were very much like your own, that there were two groups that probably stood out. We were wondering if the difference in price and resources and their abilities within the region or nationally would be a bigger part of the conversation, but I don't know if that is an inaccurate description. I thought MML and the Baker Tilly package were probably the two that stood out, at the surface without getting more detail at this moment.
Okay. So this is on the agenda as a discussion item. If we did want to take the step of moving it to a business item, what would the process of that be, Mr. Chubb?
Because we do have it on the agenda and it is on the business agenda, we could entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion, all right.
I move we retain MML on the enhanced contract, conditional upon a satisfactory contract being presented to us, which is reviewed by the office of the city attorney, and presented to us. So that's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? They fall in my top two category as well, just obviously, and thank you for all the work, and I almost
Yes,
don't
much
want to
appreciated.
discount the work that was done in this process. And it was as a matter of fact, the reporting was so thorough, it allowed us to kind of rip through it pretty quickly,
Yeah.
the way you guys broke it down.
Yes.
So it really simplified it
Much appreciated.
moving forward. So I know this was a ton of work for this process, so thank you.
Does this change your mind maybe about?
I
You
appreciate
just got
it.
this jammed through in like
Whoa, whoa.
25, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Is there any
It's a
hope?
new
Does
record,
that change your mind at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've already talked to Ben about it, and I know some of his other ambitions.
Thought it was
And
worth a shot.
I appreciate it. I really do, and I've really enjoyed my time with the city and working with all of you, so
and
thank
like,
you for.
and like I've told everyone else, if you go find a new skill, we'll just bring you back as something else and give you a couple jobs, what we do here. But no. Moving forward.
Well, thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, and I wish you well. We'll miss you. Emily, does that mean you're the whole HR department now?
Yes, and Leanne, who was our HR specialist.
Okay, so there's still two of you there. Excellent. Yes, very mighty. Well done.
All right. So now we'll be going into the closed session. The city attorney requests closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268(1)E to discuss Hios versus East Lansing, Michigan Court of Appeals case number 361105. I believe this is a roll call vote.
I think we do have to do a roll call to enter closed session.
Councilmember Brookover,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg,
Yes.
Mayor Bacon.
Yes. We're going upstairs. We'll be in the executive conference room. We'll only return back to the chamber to adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.